to the Loaded Goat. I'm Aaron.
I'm Christopher.
How you doing, Christopher?
Oh, I got my feet up. I don't know if you can tell.
I can.
Camera.
I can. You look ready to record.
I am very ready to record. I have a little notice that just popped on my screen. Let me move that so I can see your beautiful face.
Yeah. I got some feedback that we should.
From our listener?
We should take the video filters down.
Oh, take the video filters.
Yeah.
Not like our filters on what we say and censor ourselves.
No. I mean, yeah, we should still. I don't think anybody wants to hear Christopher Cordingly raw. I think so. I think we need to keep it that way. But the video filter, so see if you see my screen, you can see the stuff in my bookcase.
Yeah, well, right here is my what's this? My utility panel. No way I'm showing people that and they can get access to my house. No way.
Well, yeah,
sorry, listener.
You don't want to give that away. You need to protect yourself.
Exactly. That's how the grid in Texas ended up getting screwed up in 2021. Is that somebody found the breakers, started switching them
at the actual power plant.
Yeah, I had like the master switch that was at City Hall or the State House.
Not sure. No, they weren't just going into people's houses and flipping their breakers.
Maybe they were. Who's to say?
Well, I think it was a larger problem. That sounds pretty inefficient.
Yeah. Should we talk about something else, or are we good with this?
You want to talk about chain letters?
Yeah, let's talk about chain letters. I didn't know that this was an old thing. I remember when I first got a cell phone, it was like you'd get those texts that would come through and like, if you don't do this, you'll, be alone for the rest of your life and set it on. But I thought those kind of went away in like 2007, but maybe it's just an age thing.
Well, so you never got chain emails? Like forward this?
I was more in the text era versus the chain emails. Or like sometimes on MySpace, you'd get those things popping up.
Chain emails were a thing. I mean, it was like chain emails, forward this on to 10 people. I mean, even on Facebook, take this and copy it in and share it and get 10 other people and share it with 10 people. I mean, there's so much of this stuff that you do see.
About the only one that I kind of see so often is on Facebook, where someone will be like, Facebook owns all of your photos. If you put this in your status, you then have legal right to everything on this page. I was like, you didn't take contracts in law school, did you, honey?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like, if you want to have access, no one has access to your photos. I don't know. You probably need to get your own camera and get a dark room and develop them yourself.
Also, guess what? Facebook owns all of this stuff anyway. You posting a little thing isn't going to stop it.
No, I know that. I thought that goes without saying, but thank you for clarifying.
Thanks. My wife used to work in privacy policy. I know that you have no experience in your household in a similar vein, so I thought that I would just kind of get you up to speed.
No, I appreciate the tip. I think the thing of it is that the thing with letters, I don't think I ever got a chain letter.
No, God, no.
I mean, we were still writing letters when I was a kid, and I wrote some letters in high school, and I have a friend that I still write letters to from time to time until I got a cease and desist. But no, I'm kidding. I do have one friend that we exchange letters with, and we have a good time with that. But that's basically it. It's kind of a lost art in many ways.
That's great.
Yeah. Well, should we dive in?
Let's dive in.
Okay, so obviously we're doing the lucky letter. This episode first aired on January 25th, 1965. We open with Andy walking into the jail, hearing snoring and finding Barney asleep on a cot. And he switches out his hats, tiptoes out, and slams the door, causing Barney to wake up and come out with a hat that is too big for him. And he realizes that Andy played a joke on him.
All right, hot take I have on this one. You know how, once it's the whole thing, right? You buy a car and then all of a sudden you see that car everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing all sorts of house stuff right now, and I was focused on the doorknob. I looked at the doorknob of the jail, and it looked like a nice knob that it's kind of what we're looking at for our house too. And so that's kind of the main takeaway I had. Looked at this room, 277,000 times, and I see something new.
Yeah, I didn't
Andy's hat?
I don't think it's Andy's hat. I think it's just another hat they have lying around.
It's probably what they put on Oda. No, I bet who had a huge head? Gomer.
Yeah,
it was Gomer's hat when he was deputized.
Oh, that's a good point. I mean, it might be the same hat they put on Floyd and with the guest of honor one, where he's wearing that hat and it's too too big for his head.
Yep.
So Barney said he was out late. He didn't get to bed until 10:45.
So I honestly stopped the episode, checked your text, and then restarted it because I decided that I was watching an old episode, because they did this exact same bit like in the last episode, right?
Yeah. I don't know if it was the last episode. It was a recent one.
Yeah, I was like, this is ridiculous.
Did you feel kind of like this was just a little, did you feel like this episode was a bit of a retread?
No, I did not actually.
I didn't either.
No, just the direct line that they forgot to, if they were writing during like Google Doc days, I would think that they had the script from that episode and then they were going to just kind of plug in new lines throughout so they didn't have to reformat, and they accidentally kept an old line in.
Well, I think the time changes. I think the point is it's always never really that late. And I think that's what happens is when he's bragging. I mean, obviously I think the last time it was like, I don't think my head hit the pillow till 11:15 or something like that.
I can see it. If it weren't my job to come up with really smart analysis of this, I wouldn't have been freaking out about what episode I was watching.
Yeah, no,
I like to be prepared for my meetings. So,
and you call this being prepared for a meeting?
Yeah, I got my feet up.
Yeah, I'd hate to see I'd hate to see how you prep for other meetings.
Shooting from the hip.
Yeah. I mean, I just, you go in and you're kind of like, how's that presentation? You're like, did you do any slides? You're like, I don't need slides. What's your plan? I'm just going to tell you my plan right now. And put your feet up on the desk.
Listen up, kids. You're about to learn. And they're like, you work for us.
That may be what happens. So Andy is going through the mail, tells Barney he's sitting on a letter. Barney opens it, and it is a chain letter. So you'd never heard of anything like that before? I mean,
not in the mail. I wasn't surprised. It just sounded like something that had been replaced by technology.
Yeah, I mean, but the concept, you were familiar with the concept of pass this along. Okay.
Yeah, I just know it through SMS.
Yeah. Which would be, I'll tell you what, would be really nice if you could have just sent a chain letter back to somebody and just wrote stop like you do in a text.
Yeah.
So he needs to make 2 copies and send them on for good luck or something bad is going to happen to him. It seems like he and Andy are on the same page about agreeing that it's ridiculous, but Barney gets out the typewriter and starts copying the letter. And Barney says he's very Andy says Barney's very superstitious. Barney insists that he's not. He asks him about the number 13, and Barney goes, I don't have an issue. I just don't care for that number, and which is just funny. And Andy, we in a rare moment of continuity, Andy brings up 3 wishes for Opie, which I was kind of like, if Andy wasn't
really, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, he talks about the getting Opie involved in his superstition, and I'm kind of like, if there was going to be a moment that Andy brought up saying, Barney, you're being ridiculous, I don't think 3 wishes for Opie is an episode to bring up. I mean, that one was kind of like we were all believers by the end of that episode.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But Barney gets mad, tears up the letter, says he won't type it up. And later in town, Barney walks by Floyd, who asks him to sit down. And it turns out Floyd sent the letter. And
From next door.
From next door.
This is why the post office is not able to stay afloat these days. Is people used to just send it through the post versus they probably walk by each other 15 times a day, just passing a note in the hallway.
Well, I don't know what the rule is on a chain letter. If you just literally hand deliver it, is that is that doing it, or do you have to put a stamp on it and mail it?
That's like getting served.
You've been served with a chain letter.
Did I ever tell you I have a friend that's a kind of a corporate lawyer, and I asked him once if I could be like a task rabbit to help him serve people. Wouldn't that be fun to do?
Yeah, don't you have to be a paralegal, or can anybody do that?
I imagine that a lawyer could deputize a paralegal, for the afternoon.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, if you ever been served, it's not fun.
Have you been served?
Long time ago.
For what?
And that's not worth getting into, but there was an accident at a job, and I was part of the lawsuit.
Oh, that's funny. No, the only time I thought I was getting served once because the Department of Revenue was like poking around our house to see like property assessment stuff. And they walk up and they're like, "Are you Chris Cordingley?" And I just asked if I was going to get served first before I said yes, which I thought was what a lawyer would advise me to do.
And what did they say?
No. But getting served does suck. I think
it does. It does. But I don't know. I mean, I've seen like, in the movies, they're always trying to maneuver and avoid getting papers served to them and anything. But most of the time, I mean, I think it's just they call you up and they say, I've got documents for you. I need you to sign them. And that's that and sign for them. And that's kind of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it points out that Barney cut his neck shaving and he hit his head and that he's having bad luck. And then Floyd mentions that Barney Floyd says, I got a big tip from a guy outside of town. There was $1, which I have to imagine was a nice tip back in 1965.
Mm-hmm.
And Barney storms off and Floyd tells him to be careful. Later, Barney says hey to Opie before crossing the street, and a truck runs over his foot. I think it would break his foot.
Yeah, he was very calm, but maybe he had steelish toed shoes.
I mean, maybe he's got to have. I mean, he needs more than a steel toe. He's got to have basically a steel boot.
Yeah,
and I just don't see him walking around in one of those. And then Opie then asks Andy. Opie sees this. He's confused. He asks Andy if he's got a curse on him, and Andy explains that this is all in his head, all in Barney's head. And he doesn't want Opie to go along with this foolishness, which is reasonable.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And Andy gets in the car with Barney, who is jumpy, and Andy offers to drive, and Barney berates him. And then Barney starts to drive away, but the car goes in reverse. You ever done that?
Oh, I've never done the reverse thing, but I currently have an ailment, is what I'm going to call it, where I am forgetting to turn off the car when I get out of it.
Oh, wow.
And so sometimes I put it in park and then I get out, and sometimes I just kind of have my foot on the brake and then get out, and then it'll move a little bit when the door is open. That's no good. The other thing I've been forgetting to do is closing the gas thing. I just need to pay more attention.
Yeah, you do.
There have been twice in the last year where I've looked back on the highway and I've had my gas thing open and the little cap is flapping in the wind.
Well, that's no good.
I even did that with a chainsaw I was using. I forgot to close the chainsaw thing. So I was like, why is my leg all wet? And it's, chain grease and gasoline all down my leg.
Oh, man. I'm worried you're going to hurt yourself.
Yeah. One big walking OSHA inspector right here.
Yeah. Well, I actually have done the reverse thing with Chris Hollinghead, of all people. We were in high school at Hardee's, and I pulled up too far at the drive-thru. I mean, I was still like 16 at that point. So I back up to go with the drive-thru, and I don't take it out of reverse. And so I do my order, and I'm like, all right. And I put my foot up there to pull up, and I just shoot backwards. And luckily nothing was behind me. So it was just really funny.
Did you still get the massive burger?
It wasn't that. At that point, they had not gone to, we're going to make the most ridiculous burgers known to man.
I feel like Hardee's saw Super Size Me, the movie, and they're like, oh, there's a market out here for these people. Let's double down.
I mean, I think if you look at their market, it is men between the ages of 18 and 35.
What we know as the best of the best.
The best of single men between the ages of 18 and 35.
Hardee's is like, hey, it worked for Seinfeld. Maybe it'll work for us.
Yeah, I mean, their market used to be setting up. Their business model used to be really setting up in rural areas. I mean, where I grew up, the first fast food and still pretty much the only fast food chain to move in was Hardee's, and they moved in the 80s.
I saw a video. I haven't verified that it's not a deep fake yet, so I'm just going to perpetuate this. But it was in Eastern Tennessee, and it was a huge grand opening for a TJ Maxx that was coming into a small community with like the local cheer squad, everybody chanting and cheering as they did a grand opening. Would they do that for Hardee's in Tellico Plains?
I don't think they did that for Hardee's. I mean, but TJ Maxx, good affordable retailer moving in. I'd be excited.
This episode is brought to you by TJ Maxx. Are you a Maxxinista? Check out now online by going to the URL.
He didn't even prepare for that. He just made it up on the fly, folks. That is the level of talent you're seeing right here on this podcast. So, the big thing that Barney is now stressed about is it's like pistol qualification. He's got to pass his marksman training testing the next day to stay on the force. And Barney is worried he's going to fail. I had never even thought of Barney as a good marksman. So this is kind of an interesting twist.
It did go in a way that I did not expect.
No. Andy tells Barney to go hang out with Thelma Lou to get his mind off of this. And he picks up the phone to call Thelma Lou, and he asks Sarah to connect him.
This is the best part of the episode.
He tells Thelma Lou she's in for a surprise, but it turns out she's gluing covers on hymn books with Edgar Coleman. And Barney loses it, and she hangs up. And Barney says, "There goes the dream, the ivy covered cottage, the patter of little feet." So Andy tells him to call her back, but he decides to call Juanita instead. She is also not at the diner.
This is the interchange he has with Sarah is so wonderful. He's like, "What have you been listening?" That also, I was watching Peaky Blinders after this, and there's a similar vibe where Thomas Shelby has the operator listen in on all the calls, and then she tells him what people are doing, and that's how he stays ahead of the curve.
I'm going to go ahead and just say, folks, if you still need something more to get your Mayberry fix, it's probably not Peaky Blinders. I just want to put that out there right now.
Modern shows that are most like Andy Griffith's show. Oz, then I would say Breaking Bad, and then Peaky Blinders.
Oh yeah. Three just good, wholesome shows. I've always thought Oz would be a show that if I was going to basically scare people not ever want to go to prison, that would be the show I would have them watch, because that makes prison look like just hell on earth.
Yeah, I've never seen it, nor do I want to. The only thing I know about it is in one Arrested Development of the early seasons, they show George Michael watching all of Oz, thinking it was the Wizard of Oz and how it scarred him for life. And that was enough for me to be like, nope, I'm not doing this.
Oh no, it's violent. It is such a violent, dark show. I mean, it would get an NC-17, I think. If you send any ratings before any episodes before the MPA. Andy tells him to call her back, but Juanita's not there, and Barney storms off saying, "Swept into the dustbin of history, exit Barney Fife." And we go to commercial. This episode was produced by Pod Machine. They do a great podcast at a great rate. I was fortunate to get started on this a few years ago, and I've just been very, very pleased with it ever since. I mean, they will edit your podcast. They will do artwork for your podcast. They'll do the YouTube videos for the podcast, and they have a very quick turnaround time once you upload all your material. So I highly recommend it.
I'm pro pod in general. I love bean pods. I like pod hotels. I like pod apples, maybe. But you know what pods I like best? Pod machines.
Pod machines. Me too.
I like them better than podcasts. I honestly don't even really like podcasts that much. So I'm just thankful that you're here.
Why do you do this podcast?
To see your dimples, baby.
To see my dimples. Well, And if you really push hard, Pod Machine might be able to give you some dimples. I don't know. So go to podmachine.com to learn more and enter Loaded Goat at checkout for a 10% discount.
And that's spelled just like Loaded Goat.
After the break, Andy and Opie are on the front porch whittling, and Andy says he can't think like Barney, but asks Opie what he would do. I think he's like Barney kind of thinks like a child.
Yeah.
And Opie says he'd go to the dump and look for the chain letter. And, we've had so many people say that that's just the obvious thing, is that Barney kind of thinks like a child, and this just really kind of hits it on the nose.
And I also learned that Barney doesn't recycle. So that's paper.
No, I don't think recycling was a big thing.
You got to reduce, you got to reuse, and then you recycle.
I don't think recycling was a big thing back in 1965.
Well, I'm well aware. Silent Spring came out, like 68?
So we cut to Barney at the dump, and Andy comes up and finds him, and Andy says he came to help him look for the letter. They start looking, and they're having a tough time finding the letter, but are getting some good gossip. And he finds a trashy girly magazine that Barney subscribes to, which he says it's for the art.
Called like Hot?
Or the articles. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's like smut. I think it's just scantily clad women in different poses.
I mean, it's probably like a Victoria's Secret catalog.
Yeah, it probably was. It's like it says it's for the articles.
Like an Athleta or Lululemon, like that level.
The articles or and it says the great photography.
Sounds like a J. Peterman.
That would be something. I can't even do a J. Peterman off the top of my head.
I can't either.
So Barney gets frustrated, and Andy just tells him to go home and go to bed. He gets his foot caught in a bucket as he does. And then the next morning, Goober comes in with Andy, which I think is a nice thing. Floyd, it turns out, sent him the other letter, and Goober gives it to Barney, and who can start typing it up. And Goober leaves, and Andy just keeps saying it was nice of Goober to bring him the letter. And Barney basically realizes that Andy is implying that people who believe in the chain letter are not that sharp.
I think they're innocent folk who maybe aren't thinking as deeply as they could in that moment.
I think that's fair. I'm kind of like, if you are superstitious and you want to write 2 letters for your peace of mind, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for some it's therapy.
Yeah, that's kind of how I look at it. But Barney's irritated. He finishes typing the letters and storms off to the car, asking Andy to mail them. Why he does that is beyond me. And
I think it's a power play. I mean, I don't know. You paused like I needed to have a comment there. Now we're really going to go at it. No, hands it because maybe he was tired.
Barney hadn't had any sleep. He's frustrated.
I just typed up 2 letters. That's like a full week of work in my profession.
I'll bet it is. So Andy calls Thelma Lou, and they're there for the qualifier. Barney's getting ready. Thelma Lou shows up to wish him well, and Barney just nails the bullseye every time. I mean, his marksmanship is perfect. Yeah,
see, I expected there to be something like exploding on the back of the target. That would make sense because even the way he stands and he hunches, it doesn't look like
he looks like a guy who does. He looks like a guy who's never aimed a gun and fired before. And I don't, or he's unhinged.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah. So, but either way, Andy reveals he didn't mail the letters. Barney goes to wipe lipstick off his face with his handkerchief, and out drops a rabbit's foot and a 4-leaf clover as we go to commercial.
Just a loose 4-leaf clover, those are so hard to find. That's the one thing I do think is really lucky. Anybody can kill a rabbit and cut its leg off.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the movie Leprechaun?
No, I've seen Luck of the Irish.
That's not the same thing. Leprechaun is this dumb horror movie, but the way you have to fight the leprechaun is find a 4-leaf clover.
Oh, so it's you have to be in a prone position to look for it because you have to get down and crawl around on the ground, while at the same time you're very, very exposed to the violence that's to come to you.
That the leprechaun can inflict, yes.
Yeah.
So in the epilogue, Barney is preparing to mail letters with Floyd sitting next to him, and Andy comes in and tells him he's silly, But Barney goes and mails them anyway, but we hear a truck run over his foot as we close with Andy saying, well, Barney may just be unlucky.
He might just be unlucky. I mean, he also just needs to look both ways.
He does. I mean, I don't know how hard it is to cross the street in Mayberry. There's not a whole lot of traffic flying downtown.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, all in all,
7 whistles.
7 whistles. Okay.
Yeah, new storyline, kind of fun. Get to see Barney shoot. I really like the operator motif. You know, when he's calling Thelma Lou and Juanita. That's a good beat. That's a good bit. Opie saying, "I checked the junkyard, and that's where he is."
Yeah, it's good stuff. I'll give it 7 too.
Excellent.
How many? Do you have any final thoughts?
Let's see. I don't have any final thoughts. I do actually have a final thought. If you listen to this, you have to send it to 3 other people to listen to it. Otherwise, you're going to have bad luck for 7 years.
I'm not going to confirm or deny that, but that would really be a huge help if people would do that. All right. Well, thanks for listening, folks. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. And if you think about it, subscribe. Next week, we'll do Goober and the Art of Love. And until then, Christopher, let's go glue covers on hymn books with Edgar Coleman.
Oh, I'm busy with Juanita.